Saskatchewan Roughriders, Mr. Jim Hopson. Born and raised in Regina, Jim Hopson came on board in 2005 as the Riders' first Chief Executive Officer. Over the years, Jim has taken the Rider organization to new levels, to the point where your Saskatchewan Roughriders are now the model CFL franchise. Please give a heartfelt welcome to the President and CEO of your Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Good afternoon. Pleased to be here. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity, I want you to try and take a look at my shoes at some time. I am nothing if not a shameless huckster of merchandise of the Rider brand. And I think that's a good thing. I know that today we're going to talk about the stadium, but there are a few comments I want to make before we get into that discussion, and never miss the opportunity to talk about the Riders, of course. First of all, thank you for being here. I know this is a very good crowd. Really appreciate the support for the discussion about the stadium and what's going on with the Riders. But I want to point out a fact that just came out yesterday, earlier today, and that is that on the weekend we played the Toronto Argonauts in Toronto on Monday, and following the game was the first of a series of documentaries about the CFL teams, and our documentary, the 13th Man, played right after, and I'm sure many of you saw it. I certainly watched it with great interest. What's interesting to note is that we were told late yesterday, early today, that our game was the most viewed game in the CFL in the last 2 years. Well over 1 million people watching, which is very significant. And the documentary, The 13th Man, is the most viewed documentary ever on TSN. I think that's very significant. And the reason I point it out is the strength of the Rider brand, but also the strength of the Saskatchewan brand, because that kind of exposure is unrivaled. I mean, it's just tremendous what has happened with the Rider brand and with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but also what's been happening in the province over the last few years. So I think it's very important to note that, you know, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are a football team. I understand that, and I know to many of us it's more than just a football team. It's a passion, it's a way of life, and so on. But certainly the Riders do a great deal to promote and grow the province and the city of Regina and so on. I think it's very significant what the brand has contributed and will contribute to the province. I know that I can't come up here and not talk to you a little bit about the football team, so I'm going to do that briefly to start out. And I got to tell you, I'm very excited by what's happening by this team. I won't say that I'm surprised, and I don't say that with arrogance or any kind of cockiness, but I really had very high expectations going into this season. And I know coming off last year, which was a real disappointment for us, and a lot of people, you know, were concerned about the team. We had changed our culture here, our Rider culture, our fan culture, from a culture that didn't expect a lot of the team. We loved the team, we're going to support the team, but you know, when you don't have home playoff games for virtually 2 decades, and you only go to a Grey Cup, you know, once a decade, and you've only won 2 in the last 95 years. I mean, there wasn't a lot of high expectations around the team, but over the last few years, that's clearly changed. Where home playoff games have become the expectation. We've been in 3 Grey Cups in the recent years. We've won 1. There's now a culture of excellence. There's a culture of high expectations. So we were very disappointed in ourselves last year and knew that it wasn't acceptable both to ourselves and to our fan base. So as we started out this year, you know, with Brendan given full responsibility for the team and Brendan hiring Corey, the expectations were high. And I feel really good about where the team has come. Corey was an interesting pick, 34 years old at the time, young and brash and very intelligent, but certainly maybe not the person that would have been first on the list. I just been speaking at lunch about 3 recent very successful coaches, and I include Corey in that group. That would be Corey, Ken Miller, and Ken Austin. And when you look at the 3, you know, you would think all very different. And yet I don't think they're very different. I think there's a lot of similarities. The first similarity is their tremendous intelligence. 3 of the most intelligent men that I have known. And I'm not talking football smarts. I'm talking intelligent. All very intelligent. The other thing is all very authentic. You know who they are. You know what they stand for. There's no gray. They're pretty clear in what they are about and what they expect. And the third thing is their communication skills. Tremendous communicators. Their ability to communicate with the men in the locker room, with the fan base, just tremendous. Very different. You know, Ken in his approach was the grandfatherly type and very cerebral and calm and quiet. And Corey's not exactly that at all times. He can be, but much more fiery and engaged with the players. But a lot of commonality. And so I feel very good about the team. I know we've got a ways to go yet, but when you consider that we're playing 16 new starters on offense and defense, 8 on both sides of the ball, that's a tremendous turnover in 1 year. When you consider the number of injuries we've battled through, and we don't talk about it. Some of the teams in the league like to talk about all the injuries they have, but you know, we've got 3 starters on the defensive line. We've got one of our starting linebackers out, several of our DBs. Our offensive line has been remarkable. A new offensive line with only Chris Best returning from last year. 2 players brought in from free agency. The draft, young Patrick Neufeld from a couple of years ago and Ben Heenan. We hardly have lined up the same from game to game. In fact, I know we'll be different again this week because of necessity. And yet it doesn't matter which group goes out there. Best has played left guard, right guard, and center. He's missed some games. Dominic McCart at center's missed games. Labatt has missed games, and young Heenan has missed games, and so has Patrick Neufeld. Only Xavier has played all the games for us, and yet it doesn't matter how we line up. They play well, and they're going to continue. What's really interesting when you look at that line is their age. Other than Dominic, they're all in their 20s and several in their early 20s. 2 from the University of Saskatchewan, 1 from the University of Regina, and a young backup, young Clark from the Thunder, which is quite remarkable to have that number of young Canadians all from the province and from our CIS programs and from junior football. On the other side of the ball, I shouldn't get started on this, and young Zach Evans from the Thunder, another local voice. So the Canadian played with the local flavor, really tremendous, and I think it's so important to who we are. Anyway, I want to talk today about stadium, and I know you're going to have some questions, and so I better move on to that. And we have a chart up here. I don't know if it's going to move ahead or where it's at, but I'm going to talk about basically 4 different things today, and try not to go on too much into these things. I want to talk about the cost of the stadium, the funding of the stadium, the location, the capacity, and the issue of the roof. I'm going to preface those comments by talking a little bit about the process and the communication around the stadium. And for us, we've lived this for the last 5+ years, so you know, we feel, of course, that we have a pretty good understanding, but it's very clear from the comments in the public and the letters to the editor and so on that people have wondered about the process and how we got to where we are, and has there been enough debate and all those kind of things. Oh, okay, let me do that then. Click. There we go. Mr. Technology, my staff will appreciate that. But in looking back, it became clear to us, and I started as president in 2005, and there were very different times with Riders then. You know, we were just breaking even. We had the government forgive our $2 million loan. The team was definitely a better team, but we hadn't had a home playoff game, so a lot of things were happening. But as we moved into 06 and then 07, the team really took off both on and off the field. One of the things that we recognized, the board and myself and the senior management, was that while Mosaic Stadium, Taylor Field, was a great place to many of us, that we would have to address the issue of the stadium sooner rather than later if we were going to remain competitive and a force within the CFL. And I say that without any exaggeration, because when you look at the landscape of professional sport, if you look across Canada, we've seen tremendous changes in stadiums across the country. BC Place has spent $500 million to put on a retractable roof. Edmonton has a great facility in Commonwealth, which has been built over the years and just spent another $100 million on player facilities and offices and so on. Calgary has spent significant money on player facilities and offices and so on. Still has some work to do in the stadium, but that is their plan to move forward. We see a new stadium in Winnipeg, and it will open for sure for next year. We've toured it a couple of times, and it's going to be a very good facility. Hamilton is going to be tearing down their stadium at the end of the year, building a new stadium. Just learned yesterday that Ottawa's a go, and there will be not a new, but a very refurbished. One whole side is being rebuilt, and it's going to be a great facility. Montreal has spent significant money to upgrade their facility at McGill and added suites and seats and so on. And of course, the Argonauts play in the Rogers Center. So clearly, our facility at Mosaic is not going to measure up to what we see out there. And that, I know that the fan support here is legendary. We very much know that and appreciate it, but the reality is we're also in the entertainment business. People have options where to spend their money, their disposable income, and we're challenged by TV. That is a reality both in the NFL and the CFL. Getting bums and seats is a priority, because while TV money and sponsorships and merchandise are important, the main driver of our revenue is ticket sales, season tickets and walk-up. So it's very important to our business model to have a facility that can allow us to be competitive. Maybe more importantly is what it means on the football side, because our core business is football. And if our football stadium is not up to what others have, it's going to impact your ability to recruit and retain players, coaches, key staff, and so on. So we knew that we had to make the stadium an issue for ourselves, and that we couldn't do it on our own, that it had to be done in partnership with the city, with the province, and with others. I have to say to you that, in being honest, my preference when we started on this road was to stay at Mosaic. And a lot of that has to do with who I am. I'm from Regina, born and raised in the North End, just across the tracks. Played at Taylor Field in high school, along with Steve Mazurek. He's a cake eater from Sheldon. And yeah, I'm probably just offended about a third of the people in the room. They were better than us too then. But I went to Tom Collegiate, played at Taylor Field, played for the Rams, and then played with the Riders in the 70s at Taylor Field. So I had a very strong emotional attachment to Mosaic, and I still do. And of course, the last few years, being part of the organization, the great games we've had there, the great experiences. The other night when we had our one and only night game this year was a magical night to me and many of our fans. So I have that attachment to the stadium. And I also am born and raised in Regina and understand the value of a dollar. And I really thought it was the way to go in terms of being financially prudent and getting a product that we would be happy with. So we embarked on a process with Canada Design to come in with a renovation project, and we thought we were in the tens of millions. By the time we got it to the presentation stage, we were at about 100 million. And that was in 2007. That was 2007 dollars. And as you know, if you've done any buying and selling of real estate in the last 5 years, things have changed greatly in that world. And while I was excited by what that could do for us, it truly wasn't going to give us a new stadium. It would still be Mosaic Stadium. We could build an office to house the business, and we could do certain things for the football team. But it's really hard to change the seating in a stadium without tearing down the grandstands because of the tread and because of the access egress issues. Winnipeg went and added individual seats a few years ago, and they said it was one of the worst things they ever did because they had enough room for benches, but once they put the seats in, people couldn't get in and out. And so there would always be challenges at Mosaic with renovations. We could do a lot. In today's dollars, you know, you hear numbers of 150 million and on and up, but the reality is that that wasn't an option that would work over the next several decades. When we talked to our partners, the province and the city, while they were supportive of a new facility for the city of Regina and for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, they had concerns about investing that kind of money in an old building that was beyond its best years, let's put it that way. And so then we moved towards looking at a new facility, and there was a belief at the provincial level at that time that you know, let's dream, let's look big, let's look at a facility that can be used year-round, what can be done that will really enhance the city. We certainly were supportive of the process. We're a community-owned team. We never believed we could do this on our own. We knew we had to have partners. We had concerns about it though. From the perspective of us being the primary tenant and the primary source of revenue, and what it costs to build a dome, what it costs to operate a dome. And yet, if that could be based on federal funding and provincial funding and private, then why wouldn't we have that dream? But it really wasn't meant to be. You know, as we know, the feds backed away from the project. They were concerned about setting a precedent and so on. And without their involvement, the cost, you know, was somewhere north of 400 million, and clearly not going to be affordable in today's world. And for us, we've always said, we need a new stadium, we need better amenities, but we never believed we needed a dome in order to be successful, but we understood that the community could have that desire for a multi-use, multi-season facility. I will say that when we look at, you know, and I hear people always telling me about this dome is being built for $200 million or whatever. We've done extensive research. I have personally been on several stadium tours. We've done a lot of due diligence along with the city and the province. And we certainly don't find examples of domes that are being built for less than what we're projecting. Most recently, the Florida Marlins just opened up a retractable roof facility in Florida, 37,000 seats, $550 million. So, you know, there are lots of examples of that type of thing. We know what BC Place cost, $500 million in renovations to get to where they are. We know what's happened with the big dome in Montreal. It's basically sitting empty. The only reason that it continues to stand is it's cheaper to keep it up than it is to knock it down. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't appreciate being in a retractable roof stadium or a dome stadium at some point in time, but given the cost and everything else, we really have to question that. And I think that, you know, that's been the consensus. At some point in time, it could be a reality. If it's going to happen, I'd love to see it be retractable, because I still love seeing football played outside and other sports outside, and we've had some great weather this year that's been tremendous, but of course retractable adds cost to a building as well. So let's talk about cost and funding. We have worked long and hard with the partners to get to where we are. and there's been a lot of questions about the cost, and the cost is $278 million in total for everything. And of that, the province has committed $80 million. They feel that's consistent with other funding that they've provided across the province in terms of rinks and community facilities and so on. And the city is committed for $73 million. And the rest of the funding comes basically from the riders and rider fans. The facility fee of $12 a ticket is intended to repay the $100 million loan from the province, because the funding model is 73 from the city, 80 from the province, 100 from the loan repaid by the facility fee, and $25 million from the riders. So in reality, close to half of that 273 is coming from private sources, riders and rider fans. It's a tremendous commitment, one we feel very confident in making because of the support of the Rider Nation. We're going to have over 300,000 people this year attend our games. We believe in a new facility. We can continue that, but that's where the bulk of the funding comes. $73 million is still a big number for the city. I understand that. I'm a homeowner. I'm a taxpayer in Regina. I get that, but I think it's a tremendous value investment for the city, and one that will pay great dividends in the future. In addition to that, I should point out that the riders are committed to paying for all of our leasehold improvements. We think that'll be about $15 million. That's the locker room and the business offices and the ticket office and all the things that you would expect to pay if you were leasing space in a mall or an office building. So our total commitment is $40 million, which is very significant. And when I think about that, given where we were 5-6 years ago, I couldn't have committed the riders to $400,000, and here we're talking about committing to $40 million. But that's the kind of a turnaround, the kind of success we've had. So we feel good about that number. In terms of, can we build what we need, what we want for that? Yes. We're concerned, though, that if we don't move forward at this time, what will it cost in the future? We're using a figure of about 7% escalation cost, and clearly, if we don't do it now, they will cost more in the future. And will it be doable even in the future based on the cost of the day? So, to put it another way, if you look at that funding, what we've heard in terms of the average taxpayer paying extra in taxes or more in taxes this year would be less than what one ticket holder would pay for one game to go to a rider game, $12 facility fee. That $12 facility fee would be higher than the average tax increase. So I think that's another way of looking at it. So cost, route, location. Clearly, there was a lot of support for the downtown, north of the downtown area, the railway yards, an area we know very well. Our office is just across the street. We were encouraged to think that that was a possibility because we do strongly believe that any facility, any multi-use stadium should be built in the proximity of the downtown within the city. Being outside in the open areas is enticing to some. They think of it being easier to access and egress and parking and so on, but our experience, and we don't have to look very far, just look to Saskatoon, is that that's not the case, that access and egress is really a problem when you get outside, and also closeness, availability of restaurants and shopping and all those other things. So we think we need to be in the downtown area. You've seen the latest information around the Dewey Avenue land, and based on what was being made available, based on the cost of buying the land, based on the cost of moving CP wanting to stay in a residential area, it just wasn't doable. And at $30 million, it just went too far in terms of the cost and so on. And especially when Everaz is sitting 2 to 3 minute walk from the current stadium, owned by the city. Very, very experienced at running sporting events, the Queensbury, the Grand Center, the soccer and the rinks and on and on and on. I could talk about their experience, and the land is there and the parking and so on. So it just would seem to make sense, and certainly Everest has become a partner in the process now, working with us in terms of how we will operate the stadium. They will operate, but food services and all the rest, so we think that's been a very good thing. I know to some it seems that it's quite a long ways from downtown, but it's a 15, 20-minute walk from most of Vancouver and so on. It's really seen as minimal. So we're very, very comfortable with the location in terms of cost and all the other factors you have to consider. The last factor I want to touch on is, there, I didn't find to push my button. There's the funding model up. I don't know if you can see it as well as you'd like to, but it just touches on what I talked about: 100 million from the Rider Nation, 25 million from the Riders, 80 million from the province, and City of Regina 73. Capacity, and this is the one I get asked a lot about. Why 33,000? You're at 33,000 now. Well, there's two good reasons. One is it costs money to build additional seats. It's, for those of you that just have been through building a house, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's not just the cost of the seats, it's the expanded footprint of the stadium. Making the stadium larger to perhaps house 40,000, there's a significant cost to that. We're not talking millions, we're talking tens of millions. So capital costs will go up. More importantly, to myself and to the riders, is that you have to have the right number of seats to have a successful business model. If you ask the Edmonton Eskimos how they feel about their capacity, and if they're being honest, and I think they wouldn't be hard-pressed to give you this answer, they would say they hate it. The biggest challenge the Edmonton Eskimos have is they have too many seats. Yes, it's great when they host Grey Cup every 10 years. But when you're trying to sell season tickets, and you're trying to sell walk-up tickets, you really need an inventory that's not too large. You need enough to make the business work, you need enough to meet demand, but when you have excess inventory, it really hurts you. And the things that drive your business are your record as a team and the weather. And I can tell you that our experience in the CFL is that smaller and mid-sized stadiums are much better to work with than an overly large stadium. And you also have to operate and control that. If you look around the league, Winnipeg's going in 33,000, much larger city, but we can certainly argue our fan base is equally as strong, if not stronger. Hamilton, and this is a little surprising to me, is about 28,000 right now, building a new stadium. New stadium is only going to be in the range of 22,500. I think that's a little small, but they feel that business model is going to work in their community. Montreal moved out of the Big O because of cost of operation, but also just too many seats. And they're at McGill now, and they're about that 25,000. So if you look around, you'll see that, yes, bigger is nice to have every once in a while, but on a game-by-game basis, year-to-year basis, there is the reality of the number of seats we can sell. This year, we expanded our stadium for Grey Cup next year and also for the last 2 years. We call it the Grey Cup Legacy Project because the seats and the suites that we built will be able to be moved around the province when we're finished with them. But we're up to about 33,000, and we've had a good year. Our team has been exciting. Our team has been competitive. We've had some sellouts, but we haven't sold out every game. And as I talk to you today, we've got 2 games left in the regular season, and we've got about 7,000 tickets to sell. Over 4,000 for the last game, and 3,000. So there is this myth that if you build it, they will come. That's not how professional sports work. And the reality is, we have to earn the support of our fans by having a good team, by having a good game day experience. But given the size of our city, the size of our province, we've got to attract people from across this province to drive in from Macklin and Prince Albert and it's a big commitment. And so for us to sell 33,000 on a consistent basis is something we have to work very hard at. And we feel it will meet the need, but also give us a business case that will work. We get to 40,000, not so sure. Now the stadium that is being proposed is expandable, which is smart, not just for Grey Cups and other big events like concerts, but also for ourselves down the road. And it also is being made to be roof ready, which I think is also smart. The one thing that I will say about the stadium, without getting into detail about the facility itself, is it will truly be a 3-season facility, and it will offer amenities and services, not just nicer seats and washrooms and concourses and a restaurant and all of those kind of things, and be a great place for the riders, but also a great place for the other 200 events that go on in the stadium every year with soccer and amateur football and so on. But it will truly give you a better experience because of the wind and the cold. The big thing at Mosaic and any outdoor stadium is wind. Yes, rain is a factor, snow is a factor. But if you can control the wind, it's just like being outside in the winter. If you can get behind the garage, for those of us who used to go behind the garage and have a cigarette. Don't do that anymore. My wife will kill me. But if you can get out of the wind, it really changes things. The temperature rises dramatically, how you feel. So I think the design that's being proposed is really going to change the game day experience for people by not having that wind coming right through or rain driving in on you. It does cover the seated areas. It does provide a lot of protection, and I think it really becomes a full 3-season facility, one that we can use from early in the spring until late in the fall, and be comfortable for the fans and be comfortable for the people that are using it. And that's not just the riders, as I said, there's many other people. So I've talked a long time. I have touched on cost and funding and location and capacity and roof. And I've got some questions, I think. Is that right, John?
First question. You spoke a little bit about this. If you could just expand upon the legacy for the Grey Cup, and I think it was 14 million or 16 million that you spent. There's been some talk in the community that that's wasted money. Can you just expand upon that?
So it's a good question. And it was a very well thought out decision by the board and by senior management to move forward on this. We knew that we were going to need a certain amount of temporary seating on a year-by-year basis as long as we were in Mosaic. We knew that 28,000 wasn't big enough. We'd been around 30,000. Renting those seats every year costs a considerable amount of money, plus you have to put them up. We knew that in Grey Cup year, we really needed to increase capacity. But the challenge we had here in previous Grey Cups wasn't just seating. It was suites, it was media areas, it was many, many other things, and we knew that the stadium didn't meet that. So we looked at a project that would pay for itself, that wasn't just going to be money into a hole, that we weren't making a donation per se, that there was a business case that could be made, and we put together the Grey Cup Legacy Project. A quite remarkable project in my mind. Given that, we started it late last year and vowed to have the seats in by the season and get the suites in place shortly thereafter, and we were able to do it. And it was very difficult in this market because it's so busy. I came in very close to budget, right around $15 million. And as I said, we have that helps us also as we move into a new stadium and selling seats and club seats and other things. It creates an appetite for that type of thing. It clearly has made the stadium different, but I have to stress that the seats and the suites are in the end zones. We've done some nice things visually with it, but the bulk of the stadium is still the old Mosaic Stadium. The really neat part about this, though, is that at the end of the time of Mosaic, we'll be able to take those seats and those suites behind them and move them around the province. And whether it's 11 or 12 or 14, but somewhere in that range. Let's say we have a dozen sets of seats and suites that we can move. We're going to plan to have a process to be able to move them out to every corner of the province, whether it be Prince Albert or Yorkton, whatever. For sports facilities, it can be used as fan seating, it can be used as press boxes. So we see a legacy there that those structures are not just temporary in nature for 3, 4, 5 years, but will be around the province for a long, long time. And so we feel very good about what the project's done for us and our ability to host a great Cup next year.
Thank you for that. The tickets for next year's Grey Cup are much less than this year's in Toronto. What will the seating be here now that the end zones have been, you have new end zone seats? And then, what or which Grey Cup do you believe will be more profitable?
We'll be around 45,000 when it's all said and done. And that's not quite as much as we had in the past, but it's a number that we can work with and we believe meet the demand. Obviously, Toronto has an advantage. They have larger stadiums to start with. They have no temporary seating costs and so on. So, in terms of profit, we have higher input costs. There's no doubt, but it still will be very profitable for us. Toronto being privately owned, they don't like to really share that information with us, but we can do the math. We think they'll do very well. We know BC did very well last year, and in fact, all the Grey Cups now have become profitable, which is interesting because some of you remember just a few years ago, the league basically had to ask Winnipeg to take the Grey Cup because nobody else wanted it. So it's really turned around. But our pricing is geared towards that 45,000 number. It's also geared to the input costs we had with the Grey Cup Legacy project, and we still believe that it will be very successful Grey Cup.
You didn't bring this up, but I thought I would. Can you speak a little bit about the economic impact of the Saskatchewan Roughriders on this economy?
Yeah, we've seen some of those numbers generated here, but others in the south, that talk about the spin-off being in the $80 million, $83 million a year, Grey Cup being well over $100 million next year, separate from that. So it is a big number. When you look at the number of employees we have, the benefit of having 30,000 plus people attend the game, many from out of town, restaurants, shopping, service stations, and so on, hotels, it is very significant. And when you look at that over 30 years, it becomes a very large number, of course. But it has become a big contributor, we think, to the local economy and the Saskatchewan economy.
Two questions left. The $25 million from the riders, are you fundraising for that with the private sector, or how are you managing that?
We see that as mainly to be derived, if you like, from our sponsorships, naming rights, that sort of thing. We're doing an analysis of the value of those properties, the inventory we have. We see there is opportunity there, certainly for naming rights and sponsorships. We also have a successful business, so we have that opportunity to use some of those funds. Fundraising, we want to be careful about that. If we're going to do that, we're already asking people to pay the $12 facility fee. We get tremendous support. So before we put our hand out and start looking for fundraising, we want to know what it is, why we're asking for it, how much do we need, what do we give, if anything, in return. We've talked about things like bricks and seat names and different things. We've pretty much rejected the idea of a seat license because we feel that would be asking too much of our fans. So we're being very careful on that, but at some point, don't be surprised if there is some fundraising that we look to use to derive some of that $25 million, but we're very confident that with our business and with the support we have, that we can raise that money. The other $15 million is money that we have earmarked within our budgets and our surpluses over the last few years. We'll be able to use to do the leasehold improvements.
Last question. How has the Rider Nation responded to the proposed new stadium through social media?
Oh, as you might expect, I think Rider Nation generally very supportive of the idea of a new facility. But again, there are many, like myself, who have spent many years, decades at Mosaic and have an attachment to it. But I think people generally are excited. I think it's, to me, even more important as to how people who aren't avid or rabid Rider fans have talked about it. I talk to a lot of people very much in the community and part of the community, and people call me, write me letters, send me emails. And overall, I think people are supportive of the notion that it needs to happen. It should happen. It'll be good for the city, good for the province, and for future generations. They're excited by what they've seen in terms of some of the concepts and so on. Get questions about the process and the cost, and I think that has been more the type of questions you encounter is, how did we get here? Why are we here? Well, what are the numbers? And I think once people have that opportunity to talk to you about the numbers and where they came from and why we are choosing this location versus that, generally very supportive. But I always remember I am the president of Riders, so I want to have a different conversation with people than what others might have. But certainly we're seeing a lot of people supportive, and at the end of the day, we understand that it is a big decision for our city. It's a big decision for our ratepayers and our council, and we're just hopeful that people will see the benefit of this, not just for the Riders, but for the entire city and the province, and something we can be proud of for an awful long time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President and CEO